Hello YouTube, it's me, Simon Miller, and it's Sunday, and that means it's time to move this bit because it's not in my face properly. It's now time for another episode of Miller's Musings. It's now time, like we're watching TV or something. You ever noticed that? I've said this before, but when YouTubers will end a video and go, that's all we've got time for. You're on YouTube. I've seen 10 hours of broken Matt Hardy laughing. You don't have to stop. You can talk for however long you want. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you don't know, Miller's Musings is a series, a playlist. You can click it and watch them all now, where we basically talk about life and mental health and anxiety. And today we are going to talk about depression. It's kind of be very not similar, but it will tie into kind of other stuff we talked about before. But I still think it's worth talking about. So that's what we're going to do. And yeah, I mean, as some people have pointed out, no, I am not a medical professional, and nothing I said should be taken as, doctor's advice. It's just I'm very passionate about mental health and well-being and people's ups and people's downs. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I thought to myself, well, hey, I've got a little YouTube channel. I've got something I can sort of air about all this, so why not? Why don't I do it? And that's literally all this is about. It's something I find very challenging to talk about, and it certainly takes me out of my comfort zone, but that's where I kind of thrive. So I thought to myself, that's what I'm going to do. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, we're going to keep very vague, because again, it's a step-by-step process. But just to, again, what these things seem to achieve is that if you talk about something that resonates with somebody else, that then person feels a little bit better because you don't feel so alone, right? And that's kind of, I think, what the positives about all of this are. So yeah, I mean, look, it all kind of ties in. We talked about mental health, we talked about depression, we talked about anxiety. We talked about anxiety, and all these things kind of then come together to form, what is known as depression. And I think, again, even in 2018, I still believe that the idea of depression is treated with kid gloves almost. Like, we can't talk about that. Whereas I genuinely believe this, maybe not sort of full-on depression. I know some people have it terribly. I'm certainly not trying to, brush over that. But I think in some form, or at least the way that depression can get hold of you, I think that we all suffer from it at certain times in our life. Now, some people suffer from it every day, and that's the worst feeling in the world. I know that feeling, right? When you wake up and you know you've got 1,000 things to do, but all you want to do is lie in bed. And that is what you do. You lie in bed and the hours somehow fly by, or go really slowly depending on the day, and yet you've done nothing. And you look at the clock and it's really late in the afternoon. You're like, I haven't done anything today because you just couldn't bring yourself to get up and get stuff done. I know that feeling. And I think everybody knows that feeling. And unfortunately, like I say, some people suffer from that more days than they don't, which is horrible. And I would wish that on nobody, not even my worst enemy. But I do think on a more general level that we all have days where that happens, and it can be triggered by anything. I always find that, on those days where I wake up and feel a little less rosy, it is triggered by an event that's happened in my life. Maybe I've received some bad news through work, or, maybe I'm having a particularly rough patch in a relationship, or maybe money's stressing me out, and basically what it is to me anyway is like, a culmination of thoughts that you don't have the answer to, and you're desperate to try and figure it out, but you can't, because sometimes there is no answer, and that's just like a tennis match in your head, and before you know it, you're on the floor and you're eating junk food, and you're doing all these things that you shouldn't do, but you're looking for comfort. And that's the other thing, people look for, like, retail therapy, right? That's the thing. Oh, buy yourself something nice, and you do, and it does work, but it doesn't address those kind of emotional issues that I don't think a lot of us spend the time trying to address. And I've been doing a lot of reading recently. This has kind of sparked my passion and interest for all of this. And the term that keeps coming up is like emotional needs, or the emotional needs of a human being. And I don't think a lot of us focus on what our emotional needs are. And because a lot of the time we don't know what they are. I don't know what I need emotionally. Who does? But I think that's a really important thing to do. Like going to the gym, right? We're talking about going to the gym all the time. If you need to work your chest, because your chest isn't as big as your arms or whatever, and if it is, what are you doing? We're training arms too much. But, you know to focus on your chest. But when it comes to what you need emotionally, it's a really, really hard thing to try and figure out, especially if we tie it into relationships and stuff, right? I know loads of people, myself included, when they are in a relationship, you have certain emotional needs that you need to be met, but you're almost intimidated or scared to ask for them just in case it causes a rift, and that could lead to somewhere else, and then who knows where you're going to end up. And then the problem with that is you start to get anxious, you start to get worried because you're not having your emotional needs met. Now, that's not just in relationships, that's in life in general. And I think that's where anxiety comes from too, is because maybe we're so down on ourselves, or maybe we're too scared to actually ask someone, or whatever the situation is, this is what I need. because maybe you're worried about not getting it, and that opens a whole new bag of worms. And that's why when life gets really hard, because you realise, well, I need to open that door, but that door could open a window which leads to the dustbin. And nobody wants to be in the dustbin. Now, the reason this all ties into this thing I mentioned earlier is we won't go into specifics here, maybe in a future episode. Somebody in my immediate family suffers from this kind of stuff. So I've seen how difficult it can be firsthand, and it's something I have to deal with day to day. Not deal with, that's a terrible word. That's something that I experience in my life day to day, because I don't deal with it. I long ago have accepted is the wrong word, but I have, my heart goes out to them, if that makes sense. Like the biggest struggle I have with the situation that's going on, I realise I'm being very vague here, but one day, is that I want them to get better. And I don't like the fact that they struggle every day so much. I understand why people go the other way. Like if someone close to you is struggling, you take it on yourself as well. You think this is making me struggle. And that's completely fair. This goes back to the emotional needs thing, right? You need to have your emotional needs met, and maybe you're not getting it there. But in my situation, the thing that I experience is that I just want them to get better desperately every day. And it's been going on for a long time. And yeah, I mean, me speaking about this on camera is very alien. I mean, only a few of my mates really know about it, but that's why we won't go into specifics today. We'll build to that. My point being is that I can understand how hard that is to deal with from a external level as well. If you see somebody else struggling and suffering, and you want to help, and you really know that you can't, I mean, you can support them as much as possible, but ultimately they need to help themselves. And then that's when it ties back into the individual, because you can get help from other people, and you should. And like I say, as helpful, hopefully, as these videos are, the best thing anybody can do, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, or any of those words, is go talk to somebody. I mean, it depends who you're comfortable with. A medical professional will probably be best because they're trained in these things. Or maybe you can get medication from your GP, or maybe it's just chatting to a mate. That is the best thing you can do to, just balance yourself out a bit. But it's not always that easy. It's really hard to talk about this stuff. And maybe one of the reasons I've started doing these videos is because I've realized actually it helps to talk. Maybe deep down I was going through some stuff, and I realized, hey man, I can talk about this stuff. I've got somewhat of it's not a big platform, but it's a platform nonetheless. And who knows, right? It could reach a bigger platform, and then that would be wonderful. So maybe that's where all this inspiration comes from. But it is really difficult to, because I think I've said this before, but I mean, you kind of look at the world as a landscape, or as a sort of a living entity, and sometimes it just seems like everybody's walking around with a smile on their face. And you're like, what have I not accomplished that they seem to have done? And ultimately, it's not true. It's all, perception is reality. We're all giving off a certain perception, a certain persona, because that's the persona we want to give off, and that is important. Like fake it till you make it, right? It's confident. We said that in episode 1. I really do think confidence starts with just acting confident, even though inside you may be crying, and eventually it almost becomes your lifestyle. But I think it goes the other way too, and I think we have to be kind to ourselves and fair to ourselves, and say, I don't feel good today, and I need help. I think I need help are the three most important. I need help and I love you are the three most powerful words in the English language. That's not true at all, but you get what I'm saying. Because I think as soon as you embrace that, and as soon as you accept that, I think you'll start feeling a little bit better. Because that's what they say, right? The first sign to getting over anything, the first step to getting over anything, is admitting it to yourself and then figuring out, where you want to go. But maybe the biggest message to take home here from everything is don't keep it to yourself. And maybe that's going to be the message for all these videos. Maybe I'm just going to use these as a way, as a catalyst or as an inspiration to try and get people to talk out. Well, it's like I'm talking out, right? I'm talking out. I have bad days. I have sad days, I have hard days. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I wouldn't say it's a good thing. I wouldn't say that I like it. Don't make me do backflips. But I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. I don't think it's a negative. And hopefully, we can do stuff like this, and who else knows what we can do to try and mitigate that and make it all right all around for everybody else. So I realise I'm coming up to the 10-minute mark as I keep looking here. I like to keep these to 10 minutes. But yeah, I think that if you're dealing with depression yourself, or somebody else is dealing with depression, just reach out as best as you can. And just be there for them as much as you can. Of course, it's going to be hard. I mean, there are a few worse things, I think. In many ways, And I don't mean this specifically. I mean on a general level. You know, when you are dealing with sort of a deep depression, it's almost easier to get over an expected death. Like, you know, if a grandparent passes away or something, it's awful and it rips you to shreds. Of course, I know, I've been there. But because it's so final, it gives you those answers that you may not have. And maybe the reason that I think, the reason in my life especially, the reason I find people struggle is they don't have those answers. And so they're really struggling to figure it out. And that's when all the thoughts blow up. Whereas obviously, you know, if your granddad dies or whatever, it sucks, but that's life. And that's another thing we have to accept. Maybe that's when your anxiety comes from to begin with. Maybe you're scared of death or something. But, you know, and that's why it's so hard. So reach out. Talk to me if you want. I don't know what I can do other than these videos, but I'll talk to you if I can. And ultimately, yeah, once again, just know that everybody is fighting every single day, and you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, and everyone has skeletons in their closet, right? I've never talked about what I talked about in front of a public audience before. Maybe I'll talk about it more specifically one day if I feel comfortable. But hopefully, knowing that, you know, that's something that I deal with, you may have something similar in life, and that will just give us a little bit of a bond. And you can think, oh, look, I'm not alone. And that's wonderful. Like, share, subscribe, you know all that. Leave a comment below. Let us know what else you want to talk about. Share the video if you think it would help. Come talk to me on Twitter at Simon316. That's about it, really. Miller's Musings every Sunday.